Since we mentioned Brian Flores, let's talk about Brian Flores here. I like Brian Flores for the Raiders. Sorry, Ravens fans. I know you're big on him. I understand why. I wouldn't be shocked if he went to the Ravens. But the Raiders need someone who is going to demand excellence of them. Someone who is going to take no BS from these players. He's going to need someone who establishes a culture, who changes the culture. I think Brian Flores can do that. The big problem that he had in Miami was that people thought, or players allegedly thought, that he was too much of a jerk, basically. But that's almost what the Raiders need. And he can do whatever he wants. He didn't like certain players in Miami that were already there or that he was kind of forced to bring in. If he goes to Las Vegas, he's going to have a lot more freedom on both sides of the ball. They don't really have any established players on either side. On the offense, it's Brock Bowers and Ashton Gianti. On defense, it's Max Crosby, which Max Crosby does put a little bit of a wrinkle in this here, and I'll explain this here in a minute. But I think that he will be very similar to Curt Cignetti in that he just, every single play has to be perfect. Every single play, we're going to act like we're down 35, even if we're up 35. He can build that aggressive defense that he likes. And he has that pass rusher in Max Crosby if Max Crosby stays with the Raiders. And presumably the next coach of the Raiders, or next quarterback of the Raiders is going to be Fernando Mendoza. So he's already used to that kind of rhythm. And he'd also work well with TB12. TB12, Tom Brady, demands excellence. They talk about it. Any biography you read about him. I just think I think that he would be a solid. I think that they would work well together. I think they would both have the same high aspirations. He is just such a angry person when it comes to screwing up. And Tom Brady is the exact same way. I think he should have a head coaching job. People in the comments on that Ravens video, I wasn't saying Brian Flores shouldn't have a head coaching job. I was just saying Clint Kubiak would look good with the Ravens. I do think Brian Flores deserves a head coaching job. Flores with Kingsbury as OC could be interesting. Yeah, it could be. And Cliff Kingsbury, I think, is a great offensive coordinator. I'm going to mention him here in a little bit too. But Mr. Porky, thank you for stopping in. But I think that the Raiders have this clay kind of ball, and they don't know what to do with the clay ball. And there's a lot of people in Las Vegas just kind of staring at the clay ball, and they need someone who's going to come in and just show them, take the clay ball and say, hey, this is what we do with the clay ball. I think Brian Flores is that type of coach. And not all players meld well with that kind of coach, but really, like I said, there's nothing established in Vegas right now. And the reason I brought up Max Crosby was because supposedly when Brian Flores and Max Crosby interviewed together during the draft process for Max in 2018, probably because he was a 2019 rookie, I believe. Max he didn't like Brian. He didn't feel like he respected him. They didn't mesh. There was just a disconnect there. That being said, people change. That was a half a decade ago. Brian's grown. Max has grown. Who knows what they are thinking now? I think that if you bring in Fernando Mendoza, presumably, he is going to be used to that culture of demanding excellence, of high demands, of playing well. He played phenomenally last night. I think he had 3 incompletions and one of them was a throwaway. He is the most complete quarterback in this class right now. I'm not. We'll talk about this more as we get closer to the draft. I'm not big on Dante Moore. I think he's 20. He's young. We saw it last night a lot. He isn't great on the biggest stage. He struggles at times. I understand that if you are being projected as a top 5 pick, you go into the draft. Like that's just how it works anymore. But I can't see Dante Moore going into Vegas or um, New York with the Jets and turning that team around right now. I think he's got the potential. He's very young, but he's not going to be a day one starter who goes in and turns things around. And honestly, I don't think Fernando will be either. I don't think Fernando would tell you that he is. I think Fernando will need weapons, but in Vegas, he has Brock Bowers. They can bring in other guys, hopefully, to help him out. But I do think Brian Flores would do fantastic in Vegas. Cliff Kingsbury, there's a bunch of great offensive coordinators out there right now that are looking for jobs. Since we brought up Cliff Kingsbury, let's head on over to Cleveland. So, Cleveland, the more I got to thinking about it, I think they're just going to promote Jim Schwartz. Jim Schwartz is a familiar face. He has head coaching experience. And yes, there are guys like Cliff Kingsbury available who have had head coaching experience, who know how to coach up an offense, which is where the Browns have struggled. But the identity of the Browns and where their investments have been in their defense, in Myles Garrett. And that is going to continue to be true. We have seen Jim Schwartz with the Lions. He turned around a 0-16 Lions team and got them to the playoffs, I believe, the next season, if not a season after that. So Jim Schwartz is already in the building, and it seems like the Lions don't really, or not the Lions, the Browns don't really know what they're doing in this hiring process either. I've seen them hire, they've interviewed like the obvious guys that everyone's hiring, but I haven't seen like a real clear path. One interesting one that I thought was interesting was they're interviewing Bengals offensive coordinator Dan Pitcher. Now, the thing I find interesting about this is I don't really know much about Dan Pitcher. I liked him as a quarterback coach, and so I was a fan of him becoming the offensive coordinator. But I don't know how much he contributes to the offense because, Zach Taylor calls the plays. We don't really know much about him. He kind of sits behind the scenes. And so did Brian Callahan, who was recently fired from Tennessee. So it would be interesting to kind of see him go and make his own path. Rooting for him. Hope he gets the job. Always like guys from the Bengals to do well. But I don't know. I think they've already kind of got their guy and they're just kind of testing the waters on other stuff. Because I don't think John Harbaugh is going to go to the Browns. That'd be really funny if John Harbaugh went to the Browns. But I don't think John Harbaugh is going to go to the Browns. At this point in time. Next one, not a head coach, but Mike McDaniel. Everyone's talking about this dude. And I was shocked. This was the most shocking to me of the guys who got fired. Like John Harbaugh, should he have gotten fired? That's debatable. But I wasn't shocked to see him get fired. The writing was kind of on the wall. The thing with Mike McDaniel, he was told his job was safe by owner Stephen Ross. And then John Harbaugh became available. And then Mike McDaniel got fired. So does that mean Stephen Ross really thinks that John Harbaugh is coming to Miami? I don't know. But imagine Lions fans, if you will, or Vikings fans having to go against this. Mike McDaniel's offense. Think about what he was able to do with Tyreek Hill and like Devon Achane. Imagine him doing that with Jameson Williams and Jahmyr Gibbs. He could spread out that offense so much. If you had Jameson Williams on the field with the same time as Jahmyr Gibbs, and then you add Amon-Ra St. Brown to that offense, the defenses it's going to be an impossible time. And now I know Jared Goff is still starter worthy. He's going to start for the next few years. But if he were to eventually, start transitioning to a mobile quarterback here in the next 2 seasons, and Mike McDaniel is for whatever reason still your offensive coordinator, that would just be an insane offense. Mike McDaniel is also very aggressive in his offensive play calling, which is what Dan Campbell likes. He is a bit of more of a stat nerd than what Dan is, but I do think that Mike McDaniel would be a nice compliment without being, too much of a contrast to what Dan Campbell is. I think they could get on the same page very easily, and this would be a very fun offense to watch. I think it would also open him up to a quick turnaround for a head coaching role. This this offense would just be crazy. The Shanahan style offense with the personnel that the Detroit Lions have would be crazy. And, I can't imagine what he's going to have Isaac Tesla doing either. Isaac Tesla only catches touchdowns right now. Imagine if you had him as a true gadget player. And I think Mike McDaniel would find a good place for him in that offense. All right.